My name is Amir Shevat, and I work at Slack. But before we get started, because this is morning, I want to do an exercise. We're all about bots and conversations. But I don't know if you know, but one of the biggest fears in America is public speaking. People ranked public speaking more than death, more than snakes. So it's the biggest fear. And I worked in small companies like Google and Microsoft, and learned a trick about how to cheat your mind into turning the adrenaline that you get when standing on stage from fear to excitement, and how to be a better speaker. So as a gift, I'm going to gift this exercise to you. So we're all going to do this. And this morning, so we're all about exercises, okay? So I'm going to show you what we're going to do, and then we're going to do it, okay? Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. One, two, one, two, one, 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 superhero stand. Okay? Okay, get up. Okay. You get it? It's not very complicated. Okay. And after that, look around and you'll see all the smiles around you. Okay? That's the trick. Okay? Ready? Nobody's too cool for school. Okay? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. So if you look around, you'll see a lot of smiling faces. And the key is that we're all bots, right? We're all software at the end of the day, I think. And if you look at each other, you see that you turn this adrenaline. This was fearful, right? You had to stand within people that you don't know and do this exercise, but now you're all smiling. So this is, and I do this all the time in every presentation, and it's a trick. And then once you do that, you measure yourself on things like satisfaction of your presentation, you'll see a raise there. Okay, so now let's talk about what I came here to talk about, which is bots. And I'm going to give an overview about what are bots, what are the common use cases, what are the common UI patterns, and why bots, why now, okay? At any moment, if you're bored, you could do like this, and I can pull up a slide deck of my 2 years in New Zealand. It's beautiful, I promise you. Okay. So this is me, or at least a mental model I have of myself. I admit I have a little bit less hair, but I'm the director of developer relations in Slack. So my teams are ambassadors that connect between Slack as a platform and developers and startups all around the world. So we work with companies as big as Salesforce and Google and Amazon, all the way to any developer anywhere in the world. That's our job. That's my Twitter handle if you really want to follow me and listen about bots more. So let's start with talking a little bit about what are bots. Can the guys in the back hear me? There's premium seats here that are free, business lounge. So bots at the end of the day are a user experience. We moved from desktop into web and from web into mobile. And now we're seeing a shift from these user experience to a new user experience. These user experiences live inside a conversational interface, chat messaging or voice messaging, and they provide you with an ability to expose a service, a brand, or a product through these new interfaces. Why is this distinction important? Because of two things. One of them is a user interface is only as good as the product it exposes. So if your product or service sucks, your bot is going to suck. I've seen a lot of people trying to build bots in the last year, where they say, yeah, we're going to build a bot, and then I ask them, what is the service? Yeah, we're going to build a bot. Like, if you don't expose a good service, if you don't expose a delightful service, then your bot is not going to suck, is going to suck for sure. And if you're building a great service, you need to analyze whether bot is the right user experience for you. It might not be. When we moved from web to mobile, for example, writing long-form articles was not the right thing to move, right? But hailing a taxi was the right thing to move, right? So when you move from one paradigm to the other, you need to understand what can bots do for you. Bot is a great hammer, not everything is a nail. The other thing to understand about user experience is that there's an opportunity. When we moved from desktop to the web, there was a small company that said, hey, we're going to do customer relationship management over this new web thing. And nobody thought that would make sense. But we're all using Salesforce right now, right? So with every move, with every new user experience, there's the opportunity to disrupt an ecosystem and create new things as big as Uber, as big as Slack. Okay, so we talked about a little bit about what are bots. I want to give you a few examples of bots that I use every day. And this is a slide about the ecosystem. All the big players are going and either building their own bots, or building a platform for bots, or building a messaging entity for bots. Okay, so the first example is Amy. Amy is a great bot. I use it every day. Amy is an email bot. It's over email. When you send me an email saying, hey, let's meet and talk about the Slack platform, I just add Amy as CC and say, hey, I'm adding Amy who can help us set this up. Amy has access to my calendar and starts setting the meetings up. This is amazing because when people hear that Amy is software, their jaw drops. They can't imagine. Like, I get thank you letters to Amy with me CC'd as her manager. And you can choose between Amy and Andrew if you're into the diversity. So they did a good job there. So Amy is amazing. I pay $42 a month for Amy. And the last calculation I did, it's 10 cents an email. So it sent about 400 emails on my behalf every month, which is pretty amazing. The second bot that I want to show is actually a super bot. This is an Alexa. This is actually an Echo. Inside, it has a bot called Alexa, which is a super bot. A super bot is a bot that exposes multiple services through the same persona. This is built by Amazon. You can write your own skills to make Alexa better, but Alexa will be the single bot exposing all these skills. So this followed the pattern of a super bot. Why is this important? Because what we've seen in our households is that we've moved about 20% of our spend in Safeway into Alexa. So we're seeing a shift in money of our household spend from spending in our local grocery store to spending through a bot, which makes a lot of sense if you want just, hey, I order another paper for my printer. That makes a lot of sense for a user paradigm. Make sense? Yep, okay. Last bot I want to show is the Stats bot. I really like this bot because it helps me not go through many, many sites. StatsBot connects, you can connect StatsBot to your Google Analytics, to your Mix panel, to any data source around marketing, and then you can start asking StatsBot questions. And StatsBot correlates all that data into a single source of truth and exposes this information, this marketing information. So in this example, this is my personal website, which I haven't written to it for a long time. It's my personal blog. And as you can see, it's not performing very well, right? And now I can see the sources of where people are coming or not coming from. So once I do that, I turn something which is not delightful, which is going through a lot of different marketing sites and understanding the content, to a single persona that helps me achieve my task. So it's pretty awesome. And this is a Slack platform bot. So why bots? Why now? And why is it important for Slack? So what we've seen is that people are moving to messaging apps. This is our trajectory, but you've seen a lot of other trajectories with other messaging platforms. People are moving to chat, and millennials are moving to chat. If we all open our phones and look at the most used app on our phone, it will be messaging, for sure. 100%, the top 5 will be messaging, and it will probably be the same apps. So users are moving there. Just to give you a little bit of stats, users that use Slack are logged into Slack for 10 hours a day. They create content in Slack for 2.5 hours a day. So Slack is where work happens. Communication has moved from the phone into messaging, and consumer products like Facebook and like Kik are proving the same thing for the consumer angle. So you're seeing the shift of users into this new paradigm of existence, which they exist in the messaging app. So this is us. If you ask yourself what are the dips, which I usually get, this is how we scare new people in Slack.
Nice to meet you.
And this is actually because we have
Andrew.
fair billing. We don't charge you if you don't use it.
Right?
So if you see around December,
Hey.
when it's Christmas,
sorry.
people are not using Slack, so we don't charge them.
went
So
and,
that's why we
actually
see
looked them
this
all up
dip
last night.
of usage.
Oh,
Okay. So this is our mission, to make people's life simpler, more pleasant, more productive. But we realize that there's a lot of other services that promise the same thing. We all use Excel. We all use Calendar. We all use a lot of other tools that make our life more productive. So our mission in the Slack platform is to turn Slack into the operating system for all these things, to expose all these services, and to make Slack into a place where you not only talk to your colleagues, but also to the tools and services that you use every day for work. That is our mission. And why do we care?
I have everyone's name. And
We found out that there's a very, very strong correlation between our paying users and bot usage. So more than 90% of our paying users are using bots actively every week. And that's a very, very strong correlation. Bots make Slack better. Bots make Slack more sticky. Bot makes our clients pay, which is awesome. And that's awesome for you because you have a very, for our developers, because that makes the cohort that we're targeting much more willing to pay. And this is another statistic. You would say, hey, yeah, but they use only one bot or two bots. They actually use, on average, 8 bots on a weekly basis. Okay, and this is vanity metric, but pretty awesome. This is a year worth of work. We have 170,000 developers with active tokens. I don't measure registered developers. I don't care if you register. I care about if you're using the platform. So this is active users, developers with tokens that are actively used every week. And also 1,000 apps in our directory. Okay, enough about why. Let's talk a little bit about bot user experience, which is something I'm very, very passionate about. This was the first integration, the bot that we built. When we launched Slack, we actually built our own bots. Our 64 first bots were built by us. And this is the first bot that we created, which was an integration with a Google Calendar. And it's just piped content into the messaging interface. So people could see that they have calendar invites, and other people could see that they have calendar invites. That was the first thing. The first year, last year, was all about notifications. Most of the bots, about 75% of the bots on our platform, were only notification, piping reports, creating whenever you do something in GitHub, send you a message, sending alerts when something happened to your servers. All of these were bots that were very helpful, but not very actionable, right? So we've seen a lot of bots that were just notification. The second, and then we introduced slash commands. Slash commands are a way to invoke a bot in a way of like a command line from the chat interface to a third-party service. And as you can see, I do a / Foursquare business lunch in Miami, and what I get from Foursquare is information regarding the line I wrote. So this is an awesome way to use the messaging interface as a command line for third-party services. This was awesome for a technical audience, which was our core last year. So if you were an engineer, you're very used to a slash command. And then came the bot users. These were full conversational interfaces. My definition for bots at the time is that if you stop someone in San Francisco and ask them what they're doing, they're probably building a bot. Everybody was bot shit crazy. But if you think about it, bots could be a delightful thing. And let me ask you a question. How many of you like to do expense reports? Okay, one person. I'll talk to you later. Most people don't like to do expense reports. But if you think about it, an expense report should be a delightful thing, right? I paid for something, and now the company is paying me back. We should all wake up in the morning saying, yeah, today is expense report day. I'm so excited. But we don't. And I've done this same question all around the world. But if you ask VPs, they all say, yeah, of course I like expense reports. I pay for something, and then my personal assistant take care of the crap that I have to that other people have to deal with, and I get paid. So this is delightful. So wouldn't it be awesome if we all had these personal assistants that make our life better? And the answer is yes. But what we've seen is that maybe textual conversation, it might not be the right fit for everything. So I think the learning we had in the last year is that bots are awesome. Bots could be very, very exciting. Conversational bots are great, but you need to augment the user experience. You need just text is not enough. You need to have a rich, augmented interfaces to enable the task that you want to achieve. Nobody wants to talk to anyone for a long time to achieve a task. The way I start to think about it is as a conversational funnel. Are you familiar with the funnel, with the web funnel? So web developers have a funnel. They say, okay, if I'm an Amazon developer, if I built Amazon.com, people go to Amazon.com and then they search for a shoe and then they choose the right shoe color and then they put their credit card and then they check out. And it looks like a funnel. The same thing needs to happen for a conversation. A conversation needs to have a funnel. What is the task that you want to achieve? And is the bot the right way to achieve it is through optimizing the conversational funnel and creating a better experience compared to the other flows. Okay. So this is what we added. We added the ability to add buttons, and I've never been so excited about buttons in my life. Because now I can take action inside Slack, and I can approve a request for hiring inside Slack. And again, always compare that to the actual, to the current flow that you have to achieve a task. How easy it is to go, do you hire from time to time? Yeah, right? So you get an email from the hiring system saying, hey, you need to approve this request. And you get it on mobile, right? And then you get a link. You have to click on that link to go to the hiring system to approve it. And then you forget your password for that system, right? And then you remember that password to the system, and you go into that system, and you see that it doesn't support mobile. And you say, oh, crap. And you go back to your email and mark it as unread, so you can go back to your computer and do the same thing all over again when you're in front of the computer. So wouldn't it be awesome if you just had it as a part of your messaging experience with a button inside Slack or any other messaging platform? And just click like that. I can do this all day. Awesome. And then we added other integrations with other big partners, and you can actually not just button, but drop downs, and all the other players in the system created a lot of rich interactions. So let's move into, we covered the user experience parts, and we talked about the shift from notification into taking action, into actual moving into rich interaction within the conversational interface. Let's talk about, this was a special ask for this session, when to use bots and when to not use bots. This is what I think is the best way to think about when to use bots. Use bots in a short and contextual workflow. So if I'm talking about a certain client in a channel, that is perfect time to pull in the Salesforce bot. And when I want to take a vacation and I talk to it with my manager, this is a great way to pull your PTO bot. And if I am a consumer and I'm scouting something on the web, it's a great way to pull my sales bot. So think about short and contextual workflows. And then the other thing is when the alternatives suck. And this is the expense report or the vacation approval processes. If the current system sucks, it might make sense to explore a bot as a better way to achieve the same task. And you'll be super surprised how much people are willing to pay for improvements. When I talked to the Lyft people initially, they said that their biggest problem is that investors thought that it's not going to be viable. People can just hail a cab. Why is it easier to do it through an app? But it's actually much, much easier, which makes it a lot better to users. And then the last thing is when the conversational funnel outperforms your web and mobile. For example, with coupons, I've seen a study that from a company in Canada that showed that when you offer a coupon through web, there's a very, very low conversion rate. But in a conversational interface, when the bot is talking to you about a product, and then the bot offers a coupon, the conversion rate is much higher because it's in the context of a conversation about a product, so the intent is much stronger. So think about where are the places where conversation will just outperform web and mobile. And now, how do you decide what is the right user interface for your bot? And for this, I need a volunteer. Okay, come to stage, please. Hello. What's your name?
Ramesh.
Amish. So you're going to play the user. I'm going to play the bot. Okay? This is true experiment. Okay. Hi, I'm a great bot, but before I tell you what I do, I want your username and password for Facebook, please.
I don't remember.
So give me your username and password for Twitter, please.
I have it stored. I don't remember.
So to your bank account? I'm sorry. Yeah. Go. Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. So the key here, you all felt the cumberness of this conversation, right? How awkward this conversation was. Why is that? Because we're very, very good at creating conversation. We've been doing conversation for 160,000 years, and we've been building apps for about 70 years, even less. So we're much better at understanding conversations. When I talk to my wife, I know I'm going to lose the conversation way before I actually lose it, right? Because I know what are the arguments that I can use with my kids to convince them something or something else, right? So we're much, much better in conversations. So when you take something, don't just port it into a bot. Actually have this conversation. So have these conversations. I've seen so many apps, and I used to work for Google Play, and I've seen so many apps that actually do the same thing I asked this gentleman. Ask you for your username and password without giving you any value initially, right? And we call this the wall of login. I have 7 more minutes. Okay, cool. We call this the wall of login because people just bounced back. People went to the app, they were confronted with the username and password, and then they uninstalled the app. The same thing happens in conversation, but it's much easier to find these errors in a conversation. So if you're thinking about a workflow, just take a colleague and run the conversation with this person. And there's 2 ways of doing that. One of them is what we did just now, and the other one is called the Wizard of Oz, which is, for example, you create a user in Slack that is the bot, you call it the bot, but you actually play it. So you go to a different room, bring the user, and then you are the bot, and the user is the user, but the setup is actually within the conversational interface. So I really like the Wizard of Oz and seen many, many bot users actually employ the Wizard of Oz to see if what they're doing actually makes sense in a conversational interface. And you'll see a lot of things that go well, and you'll see a lot of things that fuck up. So this is the experiment we did. And what you've seen, I love this slide because what you've seen is that people really like to see the fruit of their work, right? So you need to tell people why to give you your username and password. You need to tell them what is the value they're going to see, and then they'll give you anything, right? So once you show them the value, they'll be willing to do anything. And if you think about Instagram, which is one of my favorite apps, and you think about how did they get you to put in your Twitter username and password. You go and you take a photo, and then you add a filter. And you have this conversation in your mind all the time. Oh, all my friends will love this filter. This makes this image so awesome. And here I'll put a smart remark here so people will be delighted. And then I want to share it. And then they ask you, do you want to share it on Twitter as well? And only when you click on that, then they ask you for your username and password for your Twitter. So they built all this value for you way before they actually ask you for your username and password. So always do value building before asking people for anything. And that's good advice, I think, for any product, not just bots. The watch is down, but wait, there's more. I guess I have 5 minutes, so I'll take 2 and then have questions for another 3. We have a Slack fund, which we announced last year. We invest in seed rounds. We don't take leads. We don't take seats in the board. We invest in 2 types of investments. One of them is if you're building a bot that is on Slack. So if you're doing HR for Slack, if you're doing recruitments for Slack, if you're doing finance for Slack, if you're taking a domain and moving it into the conversational interface, then we're happy to consider you for investment. And the other one is infrastructure players. If you're building a better NLP for bots, then we'll be happy to invest in you. If you're building a better hosting that is dedicated for this interface, then we'll be very happy to work with you. It's a dedicated fund. It's 20 million out of our budget and 60 million, which are our investors turned LPs. And we've done a lot. The last number I've seen is 24 investment in the last year. This is the RTFM, read our fantastic manual. So if you're an engineer like me, api.slack.com, and if you want to make your own Slack better, slack.com/apps, and if you want to get ideas or see what's missing there, that's another great place. Up until a few months ago, we didn't have any sales category, and that was the most requested category for us. So we invested in Troops, which is a Salesforce integration, and we actually built with Salesforce a bot for their interface. And this is the last slide that I have. I've written a book about bots. I used to have hair before I started this. So I'm joking, I didn't have hair for a very long time. But this, it's out there, and I think we're giving 3 of those as gifts for people who are playing the game of bots. So if you want to read it and tell me what's good or what's bad at it, it's my first book. I'd love to get to hear you more. You're awesome. Thank you very much.